When the wrong news came out, Nianmian thought it would be a power struggle. When the real and fake 1,000 gold duels took place, Nianmian thought it would be a house fight and business war. When the Xiuzhen Ring appeared, Nianmian thought it would be practicing against the heavens. She didn't know, but in the end, her art style turned into taking her parents to farm. Keywords of the novel. Zhen Qianjin takes her whole family to farm without a pop-up window. Zhen Qianjin takes her whole family to farm. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of Zhen Qianjin takes her whole family to farm. Chapter 1. Nightmares. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Nightmares. Damn it. Anyone who bullies Vivi should die. The driver's face was covered in grimace, with swollen eyelids pressing against his already small eyes. A fierce light flashed in his drooping eyes, which were pressed down by the thick eyelids. He gritted his teeth and kicked the gas pedal all the way, driving the black car quickly towards a white car not far away. Amidst the screams of passers-by, the two vehicles collided fiercely with a loud bang. Help! After a single hit, the black car repeatedly reversed and fiercely hit the white car, causing liquid to start flowing from the fuel tank. After the last violent impact, two vehicles exploded. Touch! The gasoline on the ground intensified the degree of vehicle explosion, and the flames instantly engulfed two vehicles. The passers-by around who were trying to save people dared not step forward for a moment, and could only watch helplessly as both cars were burned to ashes, with no one on board surviving. Ha! Li Qin suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were pitch black. He was stunned for a moment, then came to his senses and breathed a sigh of relief as he was dreaming again. The air conditioner was still diligently cooling, and when a gust of wind blew by, he shivered before realizing the cold sweat all over his body. He quietly turned on the small night light by the bedside to take a shower in the bathroom, and then saw his wife who was still sleeping. After some thought, he decided to go outside. Ah! His wife Zhou Menglan let out a brief scream, but was not awakened. Li Qin looked over and saw that under her tightly closed eyelids, her eyeballs were rapidly spinning, indicating that she had been haunted by a nightmare. He quickly turned around to comfort his wife and lightly patted Zhou Menglan's shoulder, saying, "Wife. Wife." Zhou Menglan opened her eyes still a bit panicked and confused. It was obvious that she had not fully awakened and could not distinguish between dreams and reality. Li Qin helped her up, the two of them sat by the head of the bed, soothing in a soft voice, "Did you have a nightmare?" All right, it's okay." She let out a cry and tightly hugged Li Qin, saying, "Husband, sob." Li Qin patted her back calmly and said, "What's wrong?" "This is. Husband, I dreamt that our whole family was dead." Zhou Menglan's heart was still trembling as she thought of the scene in her dream. She and Lao Li may have died at the same age, but their precious daughter is not yet 20 years old. Li Qin was a bit confused when he heard this. This dream is a bit familiar, isn't it the one he just dreamt of? Why do they all dream that their whole family is dead? Is it because the couple is united? He pressed down on his doubts and gently rubbed Zhou Menglan's back, comforting him in a warm voice, "Don't be afraid, dreams are all opposite. But this dream is particularly real." "Which dream is not real?" "No, I'm still so scared. I need to see Nianmian if something happened over there. People say that mother-daughter is connected, and when something happens to a child, parents who are not around will also have abnormal feelings." Zhou Menglan, as a rare graduate student in the 1980s, couldn't care about anything unscientific at the moment, and even though it was late at night, she wanted to call her daughter who was attending university in another province. Li Qin also thought of it in the middle of the night. Now that his daughter must be sleeping, he held down Zhou Menglan's dialing hand and said, "Don't scare yourself. You don't even know the temper of Nianmian. He's not the kind of person who reports good news but not bad news. If something really happened, he would have called back long ago. I only have this precious daughter in my own family. She has been a spoiled and cute girl since childhood. She is a straightforward and sweet girl in front of outsiders, but she has always been the best at showing off in front of the couple. She belongs to the kind of person who accidentally scratches her skin without breaking it, and can snuggle in her mother's arms and howl for half an hour, or just thunder without rain. Li Qin thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I just had a nightmare too." "What did you dream of?" Zhou Menglan replied, "I dreamt that we were being hit by a lunatic on our way home to pick up our studies from school. That lunatic was intentional." Li Qin was surprised and said, "I also dreamed that our family was hit by a lunatic who kept saying we deserved it." "What?" After a detailed conversation between Li Qin and Zhou Menglan, who realized that they were wrong, they confirmed again that their dreams were identical, but only from different perspectives. Even if both are staunch materialists, there must be some doubt at this time. Li Qin got out of bed irritably and went to the locked drawer to take out a pack of cigarettes that had been stored for half a month. After having a daughter, he quit smoking and only occasionally smoked when he was extremely depressed for many years. He drew out a cigarette and lit it, taking a deep breath. If Zhou Menglan had scolded her normally, but now she doesn't have the heart to care about it. Li Qin took a puff of smoke and said, "Actually, I've been dreaming intermittently before. In my dreams, I thought it wasn't our child. Our family had the wrong child with a wealthy family." Previously, Li Qin had intermittent dreams several times, all of which were incoherent, but now he can roughly grasp the plot. In the dream, their family and a so-called wealthy family held the wrong child, and their biological child was named Xiwei. After communication between the two families, everyone felt that the child had reached adulthood and did not force them to exchange the child. Instead, it was up to the wishes of the two children. So the two children took turns living in two families. My wife and I heard from our biological daughter that although she had good material conditions there, she was not valued and lacked care. Her foster parents have a bad relationship, and her father has several illegitimate children outside, so she is often ridiculed by people outside. And my father only pays attention to the older brothers and sisters who have made great achievements. There is also a younger brother below, who is very favored by her mother. She is the third in line and is often overlooked. After listening to it, my wife and I were very distressed and couldn't help but pay more attention to her. Many times, we unconsciously ignored the recitation. Nianmian is a well-behaved and sensible person who cares for them and is afraid of them making things difficult. She doesn't say anything when she feels wronged. I and my wife empathize with each other, thinking that Nianmian would also receive more attention from her biological parents, but in fact, Nianmian has been wronged by her biological parents. Not only do her biological parents not care about her, but those relatives, apart from her uncle's family, also look down on her as a true daughter who grew up outside. Even that child bullies Nianmian behind the scenes and instigates others to reject Nianmian. In fact, children's tricks are still very immature, but who would think of children as bad? So Nianmian suffered a lot of injustice, and Nianmian never said anything to prevent them from worrying. He even remembers clearly that Xiwei, like Nianmian, was a third-year-old student and also a small celebrity in his dream. In my dream, my biological child may seem obedient on the surface, but behind the scenes, she has been playing tricks on Nianmian. Not only did she bully Nianmian in their two family lives, but she also directed and acted to expose the truth and falsehood of the financial scandal, causing everyone to mistakenly think that Nianmian is rejecting her, and even guiding her fans to engage in online violence against Nianmian. The man who finally bumped into them is a fanatic fan of Xiwei. As for whether she instigated or even led, Li Qin is unaware and unwilling to explore. As soon as Xiwei thought of their family being hit and killed in the end, she cried falsely at the press conference, and Li Qin couldn't help but laugh back in anger. The biological parents who were daydreaming knew that these things were all done by Xiwei, but at that time they remained silent, only to no longer be close to her. But she was not kicked out of the house, and it can even be said that she had a good ending. Married into a wealthy family, lived a life that she had nothing but money, and was able to fulfill her wish. As for how life is going, it's like drinking water like a fish, knowing the warmth and coldness. Fortunately, Li Qin and his team left a will early on. If they are not here, the family property will be inherited by their daughter. If the daughter is also gone, the family property will be donated to the country. Thinking of Su Xiwei's twisted face upon learning that she had missed so much inheritance, Li Qin couldn't help but laugh. After listening to her husband's story, Zhou Menglan asked, "You've had so many dreams, why don't you tell me?" Li Qin twitched his lips and said, "I'm telling you that our daughter doesn't belong to us, so you can't kill me." Zhou Menglan thought for a moment and also felt that it was this truth. "Li Qin. Why is it always me who gets hurt?" She asked, "Do you remember when it happened? We need to be prepared in advance, what if it really happened?" Li Qin said, "I remember when a car accident happened in my dream. It was when we attended the graduation ceremony of Nianmian and found out that two people were holding the wrong child. It was during Nianmian's third year of college and just summer vacation. It was still because Nianmian stayed in Shenzhen with friends during the summer vacation. Su Xiwei's crew filmed at their school, and coincidentally, Su Xiwei's cousin went to visit and found Nianmian, who was printed from the same mold as her grandmother. He was curious and investigated before discovering the truth about the matter. Now is the end of my junior year, it's already early July. In 2 weeks, I will be studying for summer vacation." The couple discussed and decided to first determine if the dream was true. Li Qin and Zhou Menglan couldn't wait for the next day's plane and drove overnight to the city where their daughter Li Nianmian was studying at university. Li Nianmian University is located in Liangcheng. Although not one of the top 3 universities, her major is among the top in China. In the year of the college entrance examination, Li Qin and Zhou Menglan bought their daughter a small 2-bedroom apartment in the university city after she was admitted to her desired university. Although they preferred their daughter to live in the dormitory because it was safe. But in recent years, there have always been cases of roommates poisoning, and it is difficult to guarantee that there are no strange things in the dormitory. They still prepared a house for her in advance, so if her daughter is unhappy living in the dormitory, there is still room for choice. Shenzhen is 7 to 8 hours away from Liangcheng by car. The two of them set off in the middle of the night, and with a smooth road, they arrived the next morning. Fortunately, the two of them brought the keys to the house here, and they were not in a hurry to see their daughter. Instead, they sent her a message telling her that they had arrived and would wait for her at the school gate after school at noon. After washing up, the two of them lay down to rest. Even if they took turns driving along the way, each person would take 3 or 4 hours, which was quite tiring. This book is also worth 100,000 yuan in storage, double opening, capricious. Roll and collect. Developing a cute and new personality is also very enjoyable. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Missing You. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Missing You. When Li Nianmian woke up in the morning and received a message from her parents, she was startled and then pleasantly surprised. She hasn't seen her parents for 2 months, and although she watches videos every day, this feeling is different from seeing real people. Li Nianmian really misses them. When she heard her parents come to see her, she wished she could skip class and go back. But it's not possible. Now it's the end of the term, and during class, the teachers are not only reviewing, but also highlighting the key points for everyone. Although there is no difference between emphasizing and not emphasizing, it is still important to attend classes obediently, as performance usually accounts for 40% of the score. Moreover, the attendance of the final teachers will become particularly strict, especially for several senior professors in their majors who are very strict. If they find out that they are skipping classes, they must not make those old gentlemen and ladies angry at all. Li Nianmian finally managed to make it to noon after school. After the teacher stepped out of the classroom, she threw her already packed backpack behind her and ran towards the school gate like an arrow leaving a string. To ensure safety, schools do not allow off-campus vehicles to enter the campus. The school is very large, so you can ride a bicycle, and there is also a school shuttle bus, which is convenient for everyone to travel. Fortunately, the teaching building for today's class was not too far from the school gate, and Li Nian arrived in no time. Li Nianmian, who is 1.62 meters tall, is also considered petite in the south. Her small oval face is filled with collagen, with a healthy blood color, and her rapid running makes her cheeks blush slightly. Her fair and tender face is always full of smiles, her eyes are bright apricot eyes, and when she smiles, they turn into curved crescents. The nose is not the kind of very perky nose shape, but it excels in being small and delicate, with a hint of innocence and childishness, full and plump with a cute lip bead, and a pair of small pear pits on both sides of the cheeks. At first glance, she looks like a typical southern sweet girl. Li Nianmian had not yet left the school gate when she saw a familiar car from a distance. She couldn't help but accelerate her pace. In front of the car, she pulled open the car door and squeezed over to her mother sitting in the back seat. She hugged her mother's arm and rubbed it, like a spoiled kitten that had not seen her owner for a long time. "Mom and Dad, why didn't you tell me in advance when you came?" Zhou Menglan straightened her daughter's messy hair and said, "If I miss you, I'll come." Li Nian reluctantly pinched her throat and said, "I miss Mom too." "Boo boo." Li Qin pretended to be unhappy and said, "What about Dad?" "I miss my dad so much." Bobo Bobo. The daughter's exaggerated and perfunctory kiss comforted the old father's jealous heart. Speaking so, but Li Nianmian didn't believe it, thinking that her parents must have come to handle something while also looking at herself. After all, she's usually like an extra light bulb. She's not at home, so don't be too happy living together as a couple. Li Qin shook his daughter again before explaining, "We dreamt of you last night and suddenly wanted to see you, so we came over." Li Nian couldn't help but want to cry as she smiled, feeling sour in her heart. She pursed her lips and suppressed the heat from her eyes. "What are you doing?" Suddenly stirring up emotions, "I really hate it. Mom and Dad are really. My parents just dreamt of themselves and drove over for hours at night." Li Nian originally thought that while her parents were only in their 40s and still young, she could go to other cities to play and explore more, and experience more local customs. She would wait until her parents were older to go home and be by their side, but now she thinks it's better to forget about it. No matter how beautiful the world is, it can't be compared to being with your parents. In your senior year, it's better to go back to Shenzhen for an internship, and then find a job close to home. The house here can be hung up and sold, and you can buy another house in the community to spend more time with your parents. "Good girl, are you hungry? Is there anything you want to eat?" Li Qin asked while driving. Li Nian hesitated for a moment and couldn't figure out what she wanted to eat. It wasn't for any other reason, but generally, she would immediately satisfy herself with whatever she wanted to eat. "So, I really can't think of it for a while now. Look at you all, I'm good at it. I'm not picky about food." Zhou Menglan nodded and agreed, "That's quite true. My daughter is also considered a spoiled child in the family, but she doesn't have any bad habits like a spoiled child and is not spoiled at all. Our own family is not considered to be a material pamper for children, and even during winter and summer vacations, we will take our children to impoverished mountainous areas for investigation and assistance. When I used to take Li Nian to experience life in impoverished mountainous areas, the conditions for food, clothing, housing, and transportation were very poor." Zhou Menglan and Li Qin, as hard-working adults, found it difficult to bear, but Li Nian managed to adapt well and didn't complain at all. Once, their family donated to Build Hope Primary School and decided to supervise the construction of the teaching building. They stayed overnight in the house of the old faculty and staff. That's still an old-fashioned brick and tile house. The summer in the countryside is still relatively cool, especially on rainy nights when it's even damp and cold. The whole family is crowded on the same bed, and the quilt sent by the principal cannot block the chill. As for the leaked rainwater, they can only use buckets to continue. The sound of night rain was annoying, and the sound of rain outside and dripping water inside made them all want to take Li Nianmian back to the Shenzhen market. It was still Li Nianmian, who was only 12 years old at the time, who insisted on staying and saying that things should have a beginning and an end. In the end, their family finally arrived at the most prosperous CBD in the city center. After making a detour to the parking lot and parking the car, they took the elevator directly to the highest floor and walked directly to the most luxurious decorated restaurant. This is a very famous aerial restaurant in this city. In addition to its beautiful environment, excellent service, excellent chefs, and delicious food, another impressive feature is its high price. This restaurant often appears in domestic food magazines and has a certain reputation abroad. How famous is this restaurant? Even Li Nianmian, who is not considered a foodie, has heard of its name. So her face changed a bit from seeing her parents bringing her to this restaurant. She often sees this restaurant in the city's food recommendation section on the Hey book. In addition to the impressive dining environment, the price also impressed her greatly. A few people sat down under the guidance of the waiter. Li Nianmian glanced at the menu and calmly leaned in Zhou Menglan's ear, saying, "Mom, why don't we go somewhere else? It's so expensive." Zhou Menglan glanced at the menu in front of her and whispered, "It's okay, our family can still afford it." "Are you okay?" Li Nianmian had a "you're floating" expression on her face and said, "Did your family win the lottery? That kind of 5 million yuan. Zhou Menglan gave her a blank glance and said, "What kind of daydream do you have?" Li Nianmian was a bit disappointed, but her mouth was still poor. "Or is it true that my dream from childhood to adulthood is finally coming true?" Li Qin heard the key words and looked up to ask, "What dreams does my baby have? Dad will definitely help you achieve them." She smiled contemptuously and said, "One day, my parents suddenly told me that our family is actually very wealthy, and I am an ordinary second-generation wealthy person." Zhou Menglan and Li Qin exchanged a glance and placed the menu in her hand. "Order your dishes, there's so much to say." Li Nian pouted and said, "Oh," she took over the menu and ordered happily, although at first glance, many pictures of dishes on the expensive menu were very attractive. That's all for the beautiful and delicious dishes, but she restrained herself and ordered dishes with lower prices that her parents loved to eat. Li Qin saw his daughter being so sensible, and thought of Su Xiwei's luxurious life in his dream. He couldn't help but feel distressed. Order what you want to eat. The family has money, and you can eat every day." He ordered a few more things and said, "I'll take this one too. It looks good too." Li Nianmian looked at the dishes that she had just kept her gaze fixed for a while, but they were silently priced over. "Enough, enough." Li Nianmian quickly stopped, "Don't worry when you pay later." She couldn't help but cross out 2 more dishes. After calculating the weight, she stopped. Shame on waste. Clean your plate campaign starts with you. We should save resources, protect the environment, save money and protect our purse. Hee, let me give it a try. What exactly does this dish with a few hundred bites taste like? The restaurant that can be praised by everyone really lives up to its reputation, and these dishes did not disappoint Li Nianmian's expectations. She rubbed her round belly with satisfaction and said, "Woo, this is too delicious." Satisfied. "I haven't stepped out of this door yet, I'm already thinking about the next time." However, Li Nian couldn't help but feel heartbroken when she thought about the amount on the bill just now. "Let's just forget it, it's too expensive." Li Qinhao waved his hand horizontally and said, "What's up? If you really like it, you can eat it every day. Dad will give you the money." Li Nianmian thought that her father, who was doting on a crazy girl, had started talking big again, but he didn't care. He just smiled and said, if I really eat every day, you should scold me. And where did you get the money, Dad? Their family's economic strength and family status are similar. Dad is always at the bottom, with a dry pocket money in his hands. Nianmian still remembers when her father tricked her into buying fishing gear with New Year's money when she was 4 years old. She doesn't believe what Dad said, unless, if you really like it, it's not impossible. Zhou Menglan nodded in agreement, seeing her mother's serious expression. Nianmian finally felt something was wrong. Can't you? Did your family win the lottery? Nianmian has been living a carefree life since childhood. Anyway, her parents will give her whatever she wants, but in her impression, her family is just an ordinary middle-class and cannot afford to eat such luxurious restaurants every day. Li Qin and Zhou Menglan exchanged a glance and said, "Actually, we have many rooms in our house." "Oh, it's not winning the big prize." Nianmian felt a bit inexplicably disappointed, but after hearing what her parents said, she became a little excited and said happily, "Wow, can I just be a carefree renter without putting in any effort?" "Sure." Zhou Menglan nodded. I'm so stupid. I didn't even set up the automatic publishing in the submission box. The collector is a big shot kowtowing to apologize. Sorry. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Eating. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Eating. Something was wrong. Nianmian turned her head to look at her father and saw that Li Qin also nodded in agreement. Nianmian looked at her parents' serious expression and felt a bit skeptical about life. If they say they want to gnaw on their old age, they won't be angry if they don't look up to it. Zhou Menglan hugged her daughter beside her and said, "We earn so much money just to make you live a good life. You can work for the rest of your life, as long as we keep thinking and being happy." QAQ. Today, my parents were really not doing well, and Nianmian couldn't help but make the worst guess. Shouldn't you have some problems with your physical examination? Late-stage cancer. Or some other incurable disease? Li Qin was speechless. This broken child cannot be taken anymore. Zhou Menglan slapped Nianmian on the back of the head and said, "You just hope your parents are better." Nianmian, who was jointly beaten by her parents, finally believed that it was actually her menopausal parents who suddenly realized that they were too affectionate and ignored her poor daughter. Now, she finally realized her conscience, and the love between father and mother was rampant. After having lunch, the three of them returned to Nianmian's room to rest. Zhou Menglan touched Nianmian's head and coaxed her to sleep. Nianmian was so sleepy that her eyes were blurred, but she still teased her parents and asked them to agree to accompany her to dinner before returning. The two of them couldn't, they could only agree. Li Qin and Zhou Menglan had another dinner with Nianmian in Liangqing before leaving. This time, they didn't drive away, but took a plane directly. At a height of thousands of miles, Li Qin touched the sealed bag in his arms, which contained a few strands of Nianmian's hair, which he had taken advantage of while smoothing her hair. The first thing Li Qin and Zhou Menglan did when they returned to Shenzhen was to go to the relevant institutions for a paternity test. I don't know what the psychology was, and the two of them didn't choose to rush. Instead, they waited anxiously for several working days before waiting for the result. The two received the appraisal report and took several deep breaths before opening the document bag. Zhou Menglan didn't even dare to look and only urged Li Qin, "Husband, look." Li Qin also pushed, "Look." Finally, under the intimidation of Zhou Menglan's beautiful eyes, Li Qin opened it. The appraisal results show that neither Nianmian nor them have a parent-child relationship. Sure enough. Upon learning this result, both of them felt a sense of settled dust in their hearts. "It seems that what we dreamed of was a warning from the heavens," murmured Zhou Menglan. "Both husband and wife have received higher education and are steadfast materialists, but at this time, we also have to believe that the things in our dreams may happen in the future." "No way. Absolutely not. Since they knew about this, it was absolutely impossible for the family to end up in their dream. It's easy to get rid of the ending of death, just don't confront Xiwei. What's more difficult is how to handle the matter of holding the wrong child. The incident where two children were held in the wrong arms is like a landmine. If it doesn't explode, it will already explode, which will definitely harm Nianmian. As for their biological daughter Xiwei, it is false to say that she has no emotions, after all, it is her own bloodline. But the thought of the child's behavior in the dream made the couple couldn't help but feel a chill. Li Qin pondered for a moment and said, since the child in the dream has been complaining about us, blaming us for exposing the fact that she is not the biological child of the Su family, causing her to be ridiculed as a fake daughter of the Xiuzhen magpie nest, and thinking that our death is a good thing for her, then let's not delay her good future in this life. Zhou Menglan nodded in agreement. The relationship between parents and children also needs to be determined by fate. They cannot get close to Xiwei, nor can Nianmian get close to their biological parents. In fact, after returning from Liangcheng, she had several more dreams. In the dreams, she saw the thin and cool appearance of her biological child. Although she tried her best to comfort herself that it was just a dream, not necessarily a fact, there were still some traces in her heart. If that child is the same as in my dream, then our two families' bridges will return to the bridge, and the road will return to the road. If that child is a good one, then let her stay at the Su family well, and we will share some of our money with her. That's all. It is impossible for her to spend her heart and lungs on this child like she did in her dream, even to mourn and lament. Li Qin nodded. Thinking of the grievances suffered by Nianmian at her biological parents' home, Zhou Menglan couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Although our family is not the Su family and does not have the foundation of a wealthy family, in terms of economic strength, we are not far behind. When it comes to wealthy families, we laugh to death. We don't have to rely on selling children and women to do so-called marriages and maintain the dignity of the wealthy family with the happiness of our children. This doesn't look down on our family's longing. As for her biological daughter Vivi, she couldn't like her behavior in her dream. This child has really been ruined by the Su family's teachings. If she simply doesn't like to recite and resents her Nlaoli for not being as powerful as his foster parents, she can understand it as vanity. It's not a big deal for a child to be vain. It's natural, who wouldn't have come this way? But later on, she instigated fans to harm Nianmian, and even secretly rejoiced in their death after killing their family, which is fundamentally bad. A child may be a bit mischievous, but they can still be educated. However, if their nature is bad, they will become bad and cannot be taught back. Anyway, no one in the Su family welcomes Nianmian, and that child doesn't even want to recognize us as poor fathers and mothers. It's better to start by agreeing and making mistakes. Otherwise, she will always focus on Nianmian. Lao Li, what can you do? Li Qin looked at his wife and thought deeply in his eyes. There are ways, but we need to confirm whether Nianmian wants to go back to his biological parents. Although Nianmian in his dreams does lean towards us. If there are no special circumstances, which child has no aspirations for their biological parents, especially when their conditions are quite good? When Zhou Menglan was a child, she also dreamed countless times that one day her biological parents would come to find her, so how could she not understand this truth? For a moment, both of them hesitated and even feared losing their own children. Although Zhou Menglan knows her daughter's character and will not despise poverty and wealth, nor will she abandon herself and her husband, she feels uncomfortable and even a bit jealous when she thinks that in her heart, there will be other parents who will act coquettishly with her biological parents like they do in the future. Li Qin is also very worried, but he thinks more than Zhou Menglan. In his dream, he doesn't have much contact with the Su couple, but it can be seen that he is a typical egoist, arrogant, selfish, and pretending to be aloof. They have a pretense of goodwill and arrogance towards people below their class, aligning everything with their interests, even towards blood relatives. People who have no value for use are considered inferior to outsiders in their eyes. He is afraid of being naive and has expectations for these people, but in the end, he is hurt by his biological parents. Li Qin thought for a moment and decided to cut through the chaos quickly. He took a deep breath and made a phone call. "Hello, is this the XX police station?" When the Su family received a call from a police station claiming to be XX, they all laughed angrily. I didn't expect that scam calls would dare to hit him these days, so he hung up impatiently. It wasn't until he received the call again that he realized something was wrong. It turned out it was actually a call from the police station. And it's not because of those things in their company, but because of, "You said my family and someone else's family held the wrong child." Although the Su family found the person opposite them to be a bit ridiculous in their statement. How could such a thing happen to their dignified Su family? However, they thought that the other person was from the police station and was asked to go directly to the police station, and they also felt that the other person could not have targeted them indiscriminately. The Su family pondered for a moment and decided to first go to the police station to meet the legendary Li family who had the wrong child with them. He straightened his shirt and instructed his secretary, "If I have something to do, I'll go out and cancel tonight's invitation. Let Manager Su preside over the next meeting and ask the driver to wait for me downstairs." Manager Su refers to the eldest son of Su Jiazi who works in the family business after graduation. The secretary nodded and swiftly went out to arrange. The Su family inherited the beauty of their mother, who was incredibly handsome when she was young. Although she is now in her 50s, she is more attractive than most men in their 30s. He has a superior foundation compared to others, with excellent maintenance, frequent exercise, and good demeanor. Although he is old now, his appearance in his early 40s is the perfect time for mature men to exude charm. Unfortunately, he got married early at a young age. After graduating from university, he married the Miss Zhou Yi of the Zhou family in his early 20s. The two are a family business alliance, with a combination of interests, but their relationship is good. This relationship is not a marital relationship, but a cooperative relationship, so even if both of them have 4 children together, they still play their own games and do not interfere with each other. The two of them are aware that each other is extremely selfish, and even if they play outside and have illegitimate children, it is impossible for them to harm the interests of their illegitimate children like some families do. Therefore, they turn a blind eye to each other's gossip news. As long as there is not too much trouble affecting the company's stock market situation, they all turn a blind eye. Of course, both families have names and surnames, and they are both shameless people. Most people in the community only know about each other's affairs, and they have not caused any trouble outside. Even in some news, the two are rare model couples, and their family is a happy family. It's a bit ridiculous. However, such a reputation has indeed brought them some dividends, and the company's national recognition is higher. Even for this, they do not mind disguising themselves for it. Yes, it's just a disguise, not really not playing anymore. How could it be possible not to play? Not to mention Zhou Yi, the Su family alone had a bunch of scandals before marriage. After marriage it was said that they had calmed down, but in fact, everyone in the circle knew about it, but it was just not exposed. The Su family's gossip has never been interrupted, and last year there were even rumors of an affair with a 19-year-old flower. It is said that the flower's ability to soar to the sky is inseparable from the Su family's subsequent actions. Wow, my collection has increased again. Happy. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Su family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Su family. After Xiaohua gained some fame, she fell in love with a popular young actor while filming. Perhaps it was because of the show's emotional connection or because she felt that the old man didn't have the taste of fresh meat, she decided to be with the new generation of male idols. Xiaohua and the Su family are honest, while the Su family is also generous in letting others go and even blessing their relationship in public, breaking the rumors of popular young people picking up broken shoes. This generous behavior has been praised by many people. Not to mention the temptations of money, power, and overnight fame, the appearance of the Su family alone can attract men and women with lower moral values. Especially in the entertainment and wealthy circles, where there are many colorful and eye-catching things, transactions of wealth and power are common. Whatever you want, it's clear pricing and mutual benefit, and everyone is familiar with it. After all, in some privileged class circles, there is no such thing as public order and good customs. Those who can persist in not doing illegal and disorderly things are already the top figures in the moral pyramid of the circle. A man with many girlfriends naturally has children. The Su family has 4 children born out of wedlock and several out of wedlock. However, he still has some dignity, unlike some men in the circle who directly stand on the platform for illegitimate children, or even make a fuss over illegitimate and legitimate children, but rather suppress illegitimate children to death. You can ask for money and borrow opportunities, but if you want to have a child with your own marriage, there is no need for Xiwei to take action, and the Su family will clean up on their own. Just like last time, the illegitimate child who had always been obedient had a different appearance from the Zhou family's child in places he couldn't see, and was scolded by the Zhou family or Xiwei, while the Su family only treated him as invisible. Even wiped the Zhou family's buttocks and sent the disobedient person abroad with a sum of money. Xiwei doesn't have any illegitimate children. It's not that she loves the Su family more or has a noble sense of morality, but rather that she doesn't want to endure that hardship. Not to mention illegitimate children, she and several children from the Su family were all born through surrogacy. Pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding all have a huge impact on a woman's physical function, appearance, and figure, and Xiwei went crazy before giving birth on her own. Of course, her boyfriend has never been cut off, and now she is on vacation with her new boyfriend on the other end of the world. Although Su Jiazi and Xiwei are selfish, they have been parents for so many years at least. Moreover, these children have been raised by their own side since childhood, and they also have their own blood on them, so they must have feelings for both of them. It's just that this kind of emotion is a bit different from the feelings of ordinary parents towards their children. In their hearts, they always prioritize themselves, their family, and their career, with parents and children ranking behind. Among the 4 children of Su Jiazi and Xiwei, the eldest Su Puzuan is the eldest son, and Su Jiazi and Xiwei wholeheartedly cultivated him into the heir of the family group. Fortunately, this child is also very talented. He has been very outstanding since childhood, not only with excellent grades, but also with a very stable and self-disciplined personality. He started to be exposed to company affairs in high school and started working in the company during his college internship. Although he didn't start at the grassroots level like the prince in a dog-blood idol drama, he still studied the company's business steadfastly. Su Jiazi's diligent guidance and outstanding abilities have enabled Su Puzuan to become Su Jiazi's right-hand man by the age of less than 30. Look at the children from other families, how many can be as successful as the boss? So both the Su family and Xiwei are very satisfied with this child. The second son, Su Hanyue, is the eldest daughter and has a rebellious nature. She refuses to be a wealthy young lady and enjoys happiness honestly. During her undergraduate studies, she insisted on studying medicine, and later became uncontrollable. After graduation, Su Hanyue did not continue her studies, but as soon as she graduated, she followed her mentor to Africa to work as a borderless doctor. That ghost place has harsh conditions, a shortage of resources, and occasional outbreaks of war. If the shell doesn't have eyes, it won't explode on her just because she's Princess Su. When Su Hanyue returned last year, the Su family and his wife saw surgical marks on her arm and only then realized that she had been hit by a stray bullet in order to save someone. She almost couldn't come back. The Su family couldn't help but persuade her not to go, but she turned her head and rushed to her battlefield, saying that the children there needed her. The Su family cannot understand why they and Xiwei are both cold and selfish, giving birth to a child with boundless love. But as a father, even though he is a scum, his child has grown into an upright person, and he is still proud of his child. If we rely heavily on our eldest son, then the Su family loves their eldest daughter. Although she often scolds Su Hanyue, since she went to Africa, the family business has never stopped donating supplies to Africa. Su Yingxia, the youngest, is a young child and is currently in the second year of high school. At first, Zhou Yi was also quite spoiled by her youngest son who looked the most like her. This child was raised a bit naive and ignorant, and was both bare and domineering. Since elementary school, the school has been constantly inviting parents, and their grades have been in a mess. If there must be a child in this family who is being held incorrectly, the Su family believes more that it is Su Yingxia. At the beginning, the Su family also disciplined Su Yingxia, but unfortunately, he was just a foolish person who made mistakes by remembering to eat or turn around. The Su family felt that the evil in themselves and their wife had been inherited from this child, but unfortunately their intelligence had not been passed down to half of it. Su Yingxia is really stubborn and often plays tricks. Perhaps he has been taught too many lessons, or maybe he has grown up. After entering high school, Su Yingxia did not do anything wrong. The Su family had just realized that the dog had changed its habit of eating feces. Last semester, a major incident occurred and it was exposed, causing a public uproar. Some people also found out that Su Yingxia is the young master of the Su family. The Su group, which was once in the deep market, was really criticized by everyone, and its reputation was extremely poor. As a result, its partners gave up cooperation one after another. There are always people who argue that there must be problems with the group that can raise such animals, and they constantly demand that they investigate the Su family group. Although nothing was found, it still had a certain impact on the company. In just half a month, Su Group's shares evaporated by nearly 2 billion yuan. Even alerted the main branch of the capital, where people specially came to protest the Su family, and also reduced the support for this side. At that time, the development of the Su family in Shenzhen was difficult. This time, not to mention the Su family, even Zhou Yi despised this child. But there's no way, the couple still need to wipe his butt. The couple repeatedly apologized to the victim and the public in public, reflected on their education, promised to be responsible for all the medical expenses of the victim, and also provided huge compensation to the victim's family. Duck. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Meeting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Meeting. Even so, the public opinion online is still boiling, and everyone is filled with righteous indignation. It's ridiculous that the victim's parents burst into laughter when they saw the huge compensation. Their family has always prioritized men over women, otherwise they wouldn't have forced their young daughter to work in that kind of place. Now that they have this money, they can sell their son 2 houses, one for him to marry a wife, and the other for him to rent. Even if the 2 of them leave in the future, their precious son can live a very comfortable life even if he doesn't work like he does now. Isn't it a pleasure to do this? As for the daughter lying in the hospital bed, she can also be considered to have contributed to her younger brother. Unfortunately, the victim's younger brother is insatiable and encourages his parents to snatch his sister's medical expenses as well. Anyway, this loser is lying there, no different from dying. The doctors have said that the possibility of awakening is not high. Why waste this money? It's better to buy him another house if he spends millions in the hospital. The old couple thought it was very reasonable. They had promised to reconcile with the Su family, but then reneged and demanded that the Su family pay their medical expenses directly, otherwise they would not easily give up. The Su family, on the one hand, dislikes being threatened the most, and on the other hand, they also want to shift public opinion targets. Therefore, they directly exposed the faces of these parents, and then ordered the public relations department to always pay attention to driving the pace. Sure enough, the public's attention was drawn to bizarre parents, and the popularity of favoring sons over daughters and bizarre parents has risen. A group of people empathize and are filled with righteous indignation. Everyone in a family of 3 shouts and fights at once. At this point, the the Su family stood up and said they would definitely take responsibility for the girl to the end, and that medical expenses and compensation were all transferred to the hospital account, willing to accept public supervision, and not cheap and bizarre parents. Su's actions have actually won a good reputation, and the company's market value has rebounded. As for Su Yingzhe, he was severely punished by the Su family after this incident, and seeing the Su family was like seeing a mouse or a cat. The Su family is also completely disappointed with this child. Originally, the Su family wanted to throw their child abroad to fend for themselves, but Zhou Yi also reminded him that this was not their era, and the internet was not well developed. Many things abroad are allowed by law, but they are not allowed domestically. Moreover, as the emperor is far away, they cannot manage to go abroad. If Su Yingzhe is thrown abroad and what happens is exposed by the local Chinese, there is no room for rescue. The Su family thought for a moment, but still felt more at ease to keep the harm under their skin. At least he didn't dare to be so reckless. At the age of 3, it seems like the youngest child is just like this. He is not executed without teaching, and even after teaching so many times, he has not learned well. So let him do whatever he wants. As long as it's not excessive, the family can use money to make ends meet. If you break the law, just throw it at the police station. The Su family doesn't lack this child. Useless things can be kept, but if they still affect the Su family, it's okay to lose them. It doesn't matter if it's bad, it's so tasteless, poisonous and foolish. The Su family is impatient to deal with this child, and in the future, it can only be dismissed with some shares. However, this child is someone who knows how to look at his face. He knows that his parents are not as accustomed to him as they used to be, and he has learned to pretend to be obedient and clever, so he doesn't appear much in front of others anymore. As for the third child Su Xiwei, she is intelligent, selfish, aloof, capable of acting, resilient, and dignified in her work. To be honest, the Su family quite likes this child. At a young age, I know how to strive for what I want, but I can also endure my temper, have the means to do things, and leave no one to talk about. According to the Su family, this is the child who resembles him and his wife the most, but they didn't expect it to be the wrong child. I don't know what kind of child my biological child is. If it's an ordinary child, it's okay to bring it back to the Su family to raise. The Su family has money, even if it's to make up for the child's years, it's okay to give more. If this child is like the youngest, he is foolish and can only spend some money to send her abroad, so that she will never return to China for the rest of her life. If it's like the third person, then it's troublesome. It's not something that money can pass. If that child thinks that Su Xiwei has taken over her identity for many years, and the two of them are at odds, Su Xiwei is not a vegetarian and will definitely cause some trouble. If there's another news about Su's true and fake daughter, it will be troublesome if the operation is not good. He does not allow anyone to pose a threat to the Su family. The Su family felt a rare headache and pressed the corner of their forehead. Oh, by the way, and that Li family. I hope the Li family is someone who seeks wealth. The Su family is willing to give money, but let the rest go. It is impossible for Su Xiwei to let her return to her biological parents. Not to mention that she herself would definitely not want to, forcing her to go back would only increase the trouble. It's not that the Su family is reluctant to part ways, but rather that Su Xiwei is currently in a relationship with the second son of the Lu family, and the Su family cannot miss this good opportunity for marriage. I hope the Li family is more sensible. The Li and Su families are arranged in a private room in a tea house. The Su family habitually arrived 10 minutes early, but by the time they arrived, they had already seen someone in the private room. That is a middle-aged couple with an attractive appearance and a gentle demeanor. They are close together and seem to have a good relationship. They dress in ordinary clothes but are not too humble or arrogant, which makes people feel good about them. It seems that they are the Li couple who held the wrong child with them. Su Jiazi took the initiative to extend his hand and said, Su Jiazi. Li Qin shook back and said, Li Qin. This is my lover Zhou Menglan. Zhou Menglan nodded beside to signal. The three parents sat down opposite each other and remained silent for a moment. Li Qin spoke up first, I know this is a bit unbelievable, but please take a look at this investigation report. He handed over the paternity test report in his hand. When Li Qin decided to handle this matter, he had some connections and found out the high-end private hospital where they gave birth back then. Based on the results, the reason could be deduced, and the investigation speed must be very fast, but he cannot say so. This incident was just an accident. On that day, only 14 children were born in the hospital, of which 9 were boys and the remaining 5 were girls. I also asked someone to investigate. Your child and my grandmother actually look a bit similar. When I saw them, I had some doubts. When I saw Mrs. Zhou's photos when she was young, I became even more convinced Mrs. Zhou is Zhou Yi's mother, and Zhou Yi looks more like her father. When the Su family saw these photos and investigation materials, they felt somewhat convinced. It's so similar. This child named Nianmian is almost identical to his mother. Law, and the slightly round and watery peach blossom eyes are simply a standard accessory of the Su family. In fact, he had already realized that the third child was not like him or Zhou Yi, but he had always thought it was Zhou Yi's illegitimate daughter. The Su family and Zhou Yi have a commercial alliance, always playing their own games without interfering with each other, and are also very satisfied with each other. The Su family also has a bunch of illegitimate children themselves, and Zhou Yi is just one of them. Besides, this is a girl without any hindrance. In the future, we just need to give her more dowry, which is also worth it. As for the shares of the Su family, she doesn't have to think about it. But I didn't expect that I had wronged Zhou Yi for so long. The Su family pondered for a moment and said, I need to go back and investigate this matter, and also discuss it with my wife. Even though they believe that these two families are holding the wrong child, the Su family still feels that things are not that simple. Li Qin wouldn't think that people from a big family like the Su family would believe these things just because of their own investigation report. He nodded. This is natural, but what does Mr. Su plan to do with these two children after confirming that he is holding them wrong? The Su family glanced and said, if it's true, I naturally respect the wishes of the two children, but I don't know Mr. Li's plans. The Su family, on the other hand, still considers people's abilities. It can be seen that Li Qin is not the kind of person who sells children and shows hospitality, but it cannot guarantee the thoughts of his family members. Zhou Menglan spoke up, our intention is also to respect the children's wishes, but after all, the children have grown up with their own ideas and are accustomed to the current family. The sudden occurrence of the wrong embrace also had a significant impact on the two children and our respective families. Especially for big families like the Su family, I am worried about the rumors that may affect you. If everyone has no objections, it's also good to maintain the status quo. Of course, if a child wants to meet their biological parents and spend time with their family during holidays, it is also appropriate. Upon hearing Zhou Menglan's words, the Su family raised their eyebrows and kept saying, respect the child's wishes, but their expression clearly showed that they did not want to replace the child. He doesn't seem to have to worry about the upbringing of his biological daughter anymore. With such a pair of parents, the worst thing is to grow into a mediocre person. It seems that the Li family really wants to maintain the status quo. The Zhou and Su families are definitely indifferent. Zhou Yi has always considered herself noble and has not grown up by her side. Moreover, she is not a child who has received elite education since childhood. Even if it is her own flesh and blood, she will definitely look down on it to some extent. The boss is more indifferent to his younger brothers and sisters who pose no threat to him, rather than being tolerant. If the second person knew about this matter with her character, she would definitely come back to see her sister and take care of her a bit more. The youngest is afraid that he will despise this sister as a lower-class person raised by lower-class people. If Su Xiwei knew about this matter, even if she knew that her identity would not be changed, she would probably have some trouble and plan some benefits for herself. For example, sympathy from public opinion and heartache from current boyfriend. But the bullying incident last time left Sue on the trending list for quite some time, and the Sue family really didn't want Sue to be on the trending list again because of these things. The three of them chatted about this matter for a long time, and when they parted ways, the Sue family reassured the Lee couple that he would investigate the matter as quickly as possible and resolve it as soon as possible. As long as the money is in place, things can always be investigated quickly and well. In less than 2 days, top private detectives will send a thick investigation report. The content inside is much more detailed than the one given to him by the Lee family. It not only includes the background of holding the wrong child, parent-child reports between 2 children and several adults, but also a survey of the lives of the 3 members of the Lee family. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Decisions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Decisions. The Sue family looked at the report in front of them. The report was not so detailed, only showing information about this generation. They knew that Li Qin had been separated for several generations, and although he had lived a wealthy and prosperous life since childhood, at least he had no worries about food and clothing. As for their biological daughter Nianmian, she has been well raised by the Li family. From childhood to adulthood, not only has he performed exceptionally well, but he is also a good student who excels in both character and education. He couldn't help laughing when he saw the report that he had been praised by the banner for many times. This child and the second child are really close sisters. The Sue family is also not worried at the Lee family and that child may have impure thoughts and use the wrong child to do some tricks. The only variable now is the third child. This matter still needs to be discussed with Zhou Yitong. Zhou Yi is 1 year younger than the Sue family, and she is also 50 years old this year. However, they were lucky enough to have their parents awesome. As the youngest daughter of that generation, she was born with a golden spoon in her mouth, and she was raised like a treasure. Because she doesn't compete for family property, her senior brothers and sisters also particularly favor her. Before graduating from college, the family formed a marriage alliance and married a husband who was from a matching family. Although they didn't have much love, the husband's character was still reliable. Half of his life has passed and he really hasn't suffered much. Zhou Yi has lived for most of her life and has never had any worries about her life. Coupled with the fact that wealthy people have excellent maintenance methods, she looks only in her 30s and is noticeably more glamorous than an average woman. Combined with the elegant temperament unique to noblewomen, she exudes the charm of a wealthy mature woman throughout her body. Zhou Yi was urgently called back by her husband from the other end of the earth and rested for a day. She originally wanted to go out for a spa today, but her husband stopped her early in the morning. "You come," Su Jiazi said to Zhou Yi and turned to the study. As Zhou Yi strolled around, she tied her nightgown strap around her waist and followed into the study with a displeased expression. "If there's anything I can't say directly, I made an appointment with Mrs. Zhou today. It would be impolite to be late," she said. She sat on the chair opposite the luxurious desk and saw the Su family looking at the stack of things on the desk without saying anything. She thought he was going to talk about last week's cruise feast. For a moment, Zhou Yi was also a bit angry, while the Su family, who was shameless, had been messing around with the 19-year-old girl. Even if they did, rumors spread everywhere, and she lost so much face without saying anything. She invited several male models on the yacht with her sisters last week. It was all because of your willingness and payment. The atmosphere of playing together was also very tight, and nothing happened. What did he ask her for? You also take a look. Su handed her the document, and Zhou Yi took it over in confusion. After finishing reading it, Zhou Yi looked at Su Jiazi incredulously, and after receiving his confirmed gaze, she instantly became furious. At that time, the hospital that was still claimed to be the top hospital in Shenzhen actually had this kind of problem. I don't care if it was intentional or not, all the people who handled this matter must not let them go. The Su family nodded. There's no need for her to say that he had already found a lawyer, and now that the law is perfect, the prosecution period for such cases can exceed 20 years. Moreover, with the means of the Su family, even if those people can escape legal sanctions, he will not make them feel better. We also have to come back, child. The Su family laughed and said, this may be a bit difficult. Zhou Yi frowned and said, why, the Li family doesn't want to. The Su family smiled silently. That's just that the money isn't in place, why not? The Su family can't bear to receive this money, and my Zhou family can't refuse either. The Su family shook their head and said, it's not a matter of money. The Li family doesn't seem like such people either. They respect their child's choice, but this child, may be in his second month. The Su family still has a discerning eye towards people. If the Li couple were those greedy people, they wouldn't have raised such a decent child. The difficulty of getting back to the child now lies in that child. Hanyue Zhou Yi choked and could probably guess the real reason. Although she doesn't care much, it's different to not refuse from others. Can the Su family not understand their wife's personality and couldn't help but sigh, so what do you want to do, exchange that child? The smile on Li Nian's face in the photo is sweet and lively, coupled with the fact that she is her own biological child. Although Zhou Yi is not a kind mother, she still likes it to some extent. My Zhou Yi's child cannot be raised outside. Why, your Su family cannot afford to raise it, but my Zhou family can still raise a child. The Li family is just an ordinary family. Although they are not poor and treat their children well, you can see how these two people teach their children. A good child is a hindrance to them. Take a look at what education this child has received from childhood to adulthood. The school has been public since childhood, and he has not learned any talents. How can I take it out to meet people in the future? It's better to bring it back and train for a few years while I'm still young. In fact, Zhou Yi is really good for this child. Receiving elite education early, coming back early to interact with this circle, and building relationships with people in this circle will also be beneficial for this child's future. The people in this circle understand class differences the most. The Su family deliberately asked, the child has returned, and where is Vivi? Send him back to the Li family. Zhou Yi almost jumped up and said, why? I've been raising her so carefully for 20 years, and if I say I'll send her back, then I'll send her back. Besides, Vivi was made of real gold and silver by me. She can adapt to the life of ordinary people outside. Zhou Yi was a delicate girl from a young age, but in her 50s, she was still somewhat naive and unruly. Although she was not a qualified mother, she was not a bad person either. When the eldest son was born, she was still a child in her early 20s. The eldest son was the heir of the Su family and was raised by the Su family's old master since childhood. She didn't care about anything. When the eldest son was 2 years old, his eldest daughter was born, and Zhou Yi also quite liked this daughter. Who doesn't like the fragrant and soft little girl? Unfortunately, this is a rebellious person. It was quite fun when I was a child, but when I grew up, I focused on learning. This daughter is different from herself. Zhou Yi has a natural vanity, affectation, extravagance, and debauchery. She likes Chinese clothing and food, enjoys banquets and parties, and enjoys being flattered and flattered by others. But this daughter doesn't like these things and is out of place with the entire Su and Zhou families. After graduation, she even ran far away. Sometimes, her mother's love was rampant and she wanted to go shopping or do spa with her daughter, but she couldn't even meet anyone. Although the youngest son himself quite likes it, it has to be said that sometimes even his mother can't handle the killing power of the bear child. Later on, Zhou Yi also annoyed him, especially when he grew up. Only Vivi, the daughter, seemed to have been born for the sake of it. Su Xiwei is like the Barbie doll that Zhou Yi's family spent a huge amount of money on when she was a child. She is luxurious, gorgeous, beautiful, obedient, and allows her to dress up, satisfying Zhou Yi's hobby of decorating dolls. A daughter who accompanies her to go shopping, do spa, and show off among wealthy women, and also competes for favor in front of her, satisfying her occasional surge of happiness as a mother. Zhou Yi still likes this kind of child very much. Moreover, this child is still very promising. He took over the youngest son of the Lu family early on, and the two children are currently in a relationship. They have appeared in the entertainment newspaper several times before, which has also made the company popular on several searches. If things happen in the future, it will be a great help to the Su and Zhou families. Besides, she is currently in love with the second young master of the Lu family. If the Lu family finds out that she is not the Zhou family's biological child, this will definitely not happen. The Lu family is a refined family, especially the second son of the Lu family, who is the main branch of the Lu family. Their Su family has a good reputation, but they are just a side branch of the Su family. Although it has been over a century since the beginning of the new society, some family views are still firmly ingrained in the bloodline of those old established families. The Su family sighed and said, "So it's not good to keep the status quo, just pretend that this has never happened. Besides, you know Vivi's temperament. If she really comes back, it won't be good for both children." Zhou Yi remained silent, and her carefully trimmed eyebrows involuntarily furrowed. Although she likes Vivi, she also knows that this child is not a good troublemaker. In front of the elders, she is always gentle and considerate, and always flatters, but she is arrogant since childhood. She is small-minded and jealous. She will also use some small tricks against her brothers and sisters, and she is somewhat arrogant towards her little followers, but she hides it better. Zhou Yi has always felt that these are minor flaws that are harmless. Do you not see those young masters and ladies from other families who have a crush on others and do not seek to ruin them? Seeing someone unhappy with using power to oppress, killing and setting fire are not uncommon, but there are many things that can ruin people's future, and even many who are disfigured or disabled. As the daughter of the Su and Zhou families, Su Xiwei is a bit arrogant and domineering. What's wrong with her? As long as the Su and Zhou families do not fall, Su Xiwei has the right to be arrogant. She uses the power of her family to suppress those who do not like her, which is also the law of the jungle. If her own strength is insufficient, no one can blame others. But in this situation, if others know that she was holding her wrong, people who have suffered her losses before will definitely come to her for trouble. It is a small matter for Su Xiwei to be bullied, but if she is not angry about the decision to switch back to the child, she will develop resentment towards the Su family, Zhou family, Li family, and even that child. Using some dirty means on that child will not only harm that child, but once the situation escalates, it will also have an impact on the Su and Zhou families. Zhou Yi couldn't help but nod helplessly as she thought about the situation and said, "Then let's listen to you. That child didn't grow up in such an environment since childhood, so it's not a good thing to let her come back rashly. Let's forget about the past. In the future, besides the family's pocket money, resources, and future dowry, all the other things originally reserved for Vivi should be transferred to that child. As for Vivi, she has enjoyed 20 years of social life that does not belong to her upper class. The education and influence she has received, the connections she has made, and even the future wealthy husband, the enviable dowry, all of which are well deserved by the Su and Zhou families." Thank you, Chili's insect catching meow. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Notification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Notification. The Su family and Zhou Yi decided to tell their eldest son and daughter about this matter. As for the two younger ones, let's forget about them to avoid any unnecessary complications. When Su Puzuan and Su Hanyue heard this news, they both felt momentarily stunned. If it weren't for their parents who were never witty, they would have thought their parents were joking with them. Su Hanyue didn't think too much, as if she had been wandering outside the Su family. After regaining her senses, she immediately welcomed her sister's return very much. She is still in Africa and cannot come back, but she has already told her family that she will take some time to come back and see this new sister after her busy schedule. She also asked her parents for her sister's WeChat and wants to contact her in advance to establish a relationship. Unfortunately, neither the Su family nor Zhou Yi. As for Su Puzuan, he thinks more. There are 3 siblings in the family, and he only has a good relationship with his older sister Su Hanyue. Not only because this sister is normal, but also because she does not pose any threat to his inheritance rights. Although this era emphasizes gender equality and protects the rights and interests of men and women on an equal footing, many businesses also have female heirs. However, more often than not, if there is a male in the family and he is not so useless as to be unbearable, the right to inheritance still undoubtedly falls on the male heir. Moreover, Su Puzuan is the eldest grandson. Su Hanyue is a person without utilitarianism, who has always longed for a free life and has no desire to interfere with the family's business. And his younger brother Su Yingzhe is arrogant and domineering. Su Puzuan, who grew up with elite education, is impatient and disgusted with him. When he was a child, he also tried to fulfill his elder brother's responsibility by educating his younger brother, whose brain seemed to be blocked by some kind of excrement, to put him back on the right path. Unfortunately, Su Yingzhe doesn't even listen to his parents, let alone the words of his older brother who has been compared by his parents since childhood. Especially when Su Yingzhe grew up a bit, he didn't know who was whispering to him. He felt that he was so favored by his parents and should be the heir of the Su family, so he had a strong hatred towards his elder brother. Not only does he have a bad relationship with himself, but he also uses some small tricks to discredit himself in front of his parents in private. Since that's the case, let's forget it. As for my younger sister Su Xiwei, she is a typical wealthy lady. She is delicate, innocent, and has always been good at acting coquettishly and pleasing people. Who can refuse a beautiful girl who can act coquettishly, especially if she is her own younger sister? At first, I also genuinely loved her, but as I grew up, I gradually realized that my younger sister's face was a bit disappointing. It's not that I'm disappointed that my younger sister isn't really innocent and kind, but that she's still pretending in front of her family. To be honest, who in a big family would really raise their own children without understanding the truth, especially girls? This can easily be targeted by some men with ulterior motives. Just like the disappearing Xia family now, a good emerging family was almost wiped out by their son-in-law. The youngest daughter of the Xia family was raised so naively that she found a man. As a result, her parents were killed by the entire male family, her brother was turned into a vegetable by the male brothers, and she was driven crazy. The male also held their child in his hand and forced the Xia family daughter to write a letter of understanding. If it weren't for their illegitimate daughter standing up to take responsibility, not to mention whether they could retrieve the family property, the revenge of killing their father and mother might not have been avenged. Since then, these families have become more particular about matching families. After all, everyone belongs to this circle and handles things with dignity. Since we have decided to form a marriage alliance, we must have a win-win mentality. No one would deliberately marry someone else in order to annex their family business, right? This is too shameful and not their way of playing. Thinking of this new sister, Su Puzuan and Su Hanyue couldn't help but feel a bit excited. And Nianmian, who knows nothing about it over there, has already completed the final exam of this semester. She had already made an appointment with her roommate to play in Shenzhen for a week after the exam before returning. But her parents' abnormal behavior before, coupled with just finishing the exam when she received a phone call from her parents. On the phone, her parents asked her to hurry back and said that she had already bought her plane tickets. Nianmian could only mutter to her roommate, and after agreeing to return to school for a week of milk tea, her roommate reluctantly let her go back. After tidying up the dormitory, Nianmian received a call from her mother asking her to go back to the house and follow her instructions to check the doors and windows of each room one by one. She also checked the water, electricity, and refrigerator. After confirming with her mother on the other end of the phone that there were no problems, Nianmian carried her backpack and stepped onto the road to the airport. She had originally planned to drive back the car they had driven last time, but as soon as she mentioned it to them, she was scolded. My parents firmly refused to let her do such dangerous things. After all, a girl who drives for 7 or 8 hours is too worried. In case something unexpected happens on the road. In the phone conversation, Li Qin and Zhou Menglan talked at all costs, saying that they would drive back after they arrived next time, and that the car was not in short supply at home. This made Li Nianmian give up the idea of driving back and honestly buy a plane ticket. If you take a plane from Liangqing to Shenzhen, the distance is not too far, and it's less than 2 hours of travel. Li Nianmian got off the plane, picked up her luggage, and followed the crowd out. Li Qin stood in the waiting crowd wearing a casual outfit bought by his precious daughter, very conspicuous. Nian Nian. Li Qin looked at the girl in the crowd with sharp eyes and waved excitedly. Wearing a handsome father, Li Nian reluctantly threw away the suitcase in her hand and threw it at her. Her smiling eyes were almost gone. Dad. Li Qin hugged his precious daughter whom he hadn't seen for 2 weeks, and after weighing it, he felt a little thinner. He picked up his daughter from school like he did when he was a child, took her backpack from behind, and walked over to pick up his suitcase. Let's go home. Li Nian reluctantly took his arm and walked without looking at the road, swaying and coquettishly. Where's my mom? Humph, when we meet, we'll ask your mom. Where's your mom? Isn't it enough to have a dad pick him up? Li Qin pretended to be jealous and pulled 2 strands of her daughter's hair before answering, Your mother is cooking for you at home, just waiting for us to go back. Ah. Dad. The static electricity caused Li Nianmian's hair to burst open. She looked at her father with a mournful look, reached out to pull at her own hair, and found that smoothing hair had failed, so she gave up. Did I miss my mom? Why don't you just miss Dad? What's going on with my parents lately? They seem to be vying for favor. Something's really wrong. Usually, it's the 2 of them who despise her as a light bulb. Li Nianmian skillfully used the coquettish technique. I've been thinking about it for the past few days. I've lost weight. She instinctively touched her belly and said she was really hungry. Actually, there are airplane meals on the plane, but the smell of airplane meals on this flight is indescribable. Li Nian would rather starve than force her mouth and compromise her stomach. During a casual conversation, the 2 of them arrived at the parking lot. Li Nianmian saw her own car from afar and rushed over, saying, Oh duck. Go home. Mom, I'm back. When Li Nianmian returned home and opened the door, she was greeted by the hot aroma of food. She changed her shoes and shouted loudly. Li Qin looked at the girl who had lost her after using her, shook her head, and placed her backpack on the sofa. Just come back, the last dish is almost ready. Zhou Menglan's voice came from the kitchen. Li Nian rushed to the kitchen with her own jade dog slippers and hugged Zhou Menglan, who was wearing a floral apron while cooking. She tiptoed up and saw from her mother's shoulder that the pot was stewing her favorite dish. She was pleasantly surprised and said, Wow. My favorite potato stewed beef. She gave Zhou Menglan a fierce kiss on the cheek and made a click sound. Thank you, Mom. Zhou Menglan was kissed and let out a disgusted sigh. It's all the smell of oil fumes, and you don't mind the smell. No, Mom's body is fragrant. Li Nian leaned back on Zhou Menglan with satisfaction. I really want to go back to my childhood and become a little one, always relying on my parents. Mom, why don't you go pick me up with Dad? You don't even know how disappointed I am when I see only Dad around. Who was arguing before boarding the plane about wanting to eat the dishes made by your mother? I'll go pick you up, and then you'll transform into an old mother to cook for you. Zhou Menglan felt that this child couldn't get used to it and was the best at making progress. Humph, I don't care. I'm so sad now. I have to sleep with my mom tonight to get better. Li Nian twisted and twisted as she played around. Go aside, don't get in the way, Zhou Menglan said disdainfully, but was happy that her daughter was getting closer to her. She took out the vegetables and asked her daughter to take them out. You can eat now, she said. Li Nian held the steaming hot rice and felt the saliva in her mouth secrete wildly. Dad, let's eat. After a satisfying dinner, Li Nian tried to help Li Qin put the dishes in the dishwasher, but was kicked out by Li Qin. Go ahead, it's all oil. Don't touch it, go out and eat some fruit. Li Nian reluctantly hammered Li Qin's shoulder armor twice before leaving. She lay down tightly next to Zhou Menglan, with her head resting on her mother's thigh and her mouth wide open, waiting for her mother to feed her. Unexpectedly, she was slapped by Zhou Menglan. Just finished eating, don't lie down, get up. Okay. Li Nianmian sat up and Guyu collapsed. Actually, my parents have something to tell you. Li Qin, who had finished washing his hands, came out and sat on the other side of Li Nianmian. He exchanged a glance with his wife before speaking. You're so old, it's time to talk to you about family matters. Li Nianmian was originally playful and smiling, but when she saw the serious expression on her parents' faces, she began to feel something was wrong. She couldn't help but straighten her waist and sit upright. Mom and Dad, what do you say? In fact, she really doesn't know much about the things at home. Everyone else is a relative of 7 or 8 aunties, but in her impression, she has never seen any relatives of her own since childhood. The closer relatives are also a few friends of her parents. Do you remember when I told you before that there were actually several houses at home? Zhou Menglan asked. Li Nianmian nodded and said, remember. In fact, she knew that there were more than 2 houses in their family. When she was a child, she even overheard her parents talking about rent collection and so on. But this also seems to be a common situation. Family members. I seem to be. Yesterday. Received the signed text message. Thank you to Su Ziqing for catching insects. Grab a fecal shovel. Official. Degree, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. House. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 9. Family meetings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Family meetings. Zhou Menglan could tell at a glance that she was having wild thoughts again. She couldn't help but knock on her forehead and said, "What are you thinking all day long?" Li Qin went to the scene in his dream and just fabricated a story, roughly telling the story of the Li and Su families holding the wrong child. If you want to return to the Su family, although we are very sad, we also respect your choice, Zhou Menglan said softly as she stroked her daughter's hair. It turned out that she was holding the wrong child, not being abducted or adopted. Li Nian breathed a sigh of relief. But when she thought about it, it meant she had biological parents, and her parents had their own biological children, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Although she is curious about her biological parents, it is only limited to curiosity. But what if her parents want her biological daughter to come back? Is she leaving this home? Li Nianmian felt infinite fear in her heart. Have you contacted them? What did they say on their end? Li Qin decided to be honest. When I found out, I called the police. The police station contacted them, and my parents and your biological father had a private conversation. We all respect the children's wishes. The children over there are unwilling to let them leave, but they warmly welcome you back. Remember, your thoughts are the most important. Zhou Menglan pursed her lips and couldn't help but sneer at the Su family's expression at the time. Indeed, few capitalists who can make money have a conscience. No matter how well he concealed it, he couldn't conceal the fear and suspicion that appeared in his eyes. He might have initially regarded his own family as money fraud. 2 days later, when they contacted again, their attitude changed. They also guessed to some extent that these wealthy people must have secretly investigated them and knew that their Li family did not lack money, not the kind of money extortion, which led to a change in attitude. This kind of snobbishness, I'm not used to it when I think about it. Moreover, what Lao Li said sounds good, welcome, is actually just thinking about going back if you want to. It doesn't matter if you don't go back. They don't care about the living conditions of their biological children here, but rather worry about whether the Li family will use this as a threat to them. The meaning behind the scenes is to use a sum of money to send them away, then bring Nianmian back, and not allow them to have any contact with Nianmian in the future. Cut, just a few million, they're rare. Or is it common in their circle to set prices for everything and think that money can buy everything? Still talking about what kind of wealthy family it is, being so stingy with their actions, shouldn't it be like the fake wealthy family mentioned in entertainment news, it's just a facade? No wonder they dream of using their children's marriage as a bargaining chip, and several children are all in a marriage alliance. No wonder that child, despite being a wealthy family member, still has to go to the entertainment industry at a young age to make a living. Su Xiwei. I'm not trying to make money, I'm trying to dream. Zhou Menglan thought, becoming more and more determined to not let Nianmian come into contact with the Su family. Upon hearing this, Li Nian's heart quietly fell. She is curious about her biological parents and has not been in contact with them for so many years. She is completely a stranger. She lives a happy life and doesn't need any redemption from her biological parents. Moreover, it sounds like the Su family is not willing to let her come back. They must have deep feelings for that child, and when they hear that they respect their own wishes, it actually proves that their biological parents have no attachment to them. Although Li Nianmian felt ashamed, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. When it comes to doing things, the most important thing is fairness, right? The Su family doesn't want that child to come back, so it's definitely not easy for oneself to go to the Su family. The Li family and the Su family has one child per person, which is great. However, Li Nian eagerly asked AI, then, parents, that child. Now that child from the Su family is after all the biological child of their parents, who have always loved their child, will parents' biological children come back? Zhou Menglan smiled and said, it depends on fate. We have made an appointment with your biological parents and will meet tomorrow. Li Qin touched Li Nianmian's head and said, if you really like your biological parents, you can occasionally go and live with them for a few days. There, you also have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger brother. He added, I remember when you were a child, you were asking for a younger brother or sister. Now not only do you have a younger brother or sister, but you also have an older brother or sister. Overall, Su Xiwei is over half an hour younger than her, so she can be considered a younger sister. Li Nianmian nodded. Oh, her biological parents are still a big family, this generation has so many children. However, they all grew up together from a young age, and although we may have blood ties, we are actually strangers. If we rashly go, we may not be unwelcome, but it's a bit uncomfortable. Li Nianmian felt lost in thought. And just now I heard my dad say that the Su family is very big and has a complex composition, so there won't be any house fights when I go there on my own. Don't worry, my knowledge about these is limited to the Qin Palace Doju and TVB drama. Besides, why is this setting so similar to the clichés in those fake and genuine novels? She won't be the real daughter who is not likable, insists on competing with fake daughters for everything, and ends up disfigured, disabled, or even dead, right? Hey. Li Nianmian trembled with goosebumps all over her brain. Zhou Menglan saw her daughter trembling and thought she was afraid. She quickly grabbed her and said, don't be afraid. She secretly glanced at her husband, pretending to be generous. This was because she was afraid her daughter wouldn't be able to give birth to her thoughts over there. If he really goes there, I'm afraid he'll cry louder than anyone else. My parents respect your thoughts, but we can't deny that you were raised by us. If you dare to admit that you won't come back after that, I'll break your leg. She pretended to be fierce and raised her arm. Li Nian reluctantly hugged her arm, rubbed and acted coquettishly, with a small smug expression on her face. If you really respect my thoughts, you wouldn't have chosen to tell me at this time that there are so many houses in my house. He, parents, are you afraid that I will go back to my biological parents' house? Li Qin smiled. This mischievous little girl with a quick mind couldn't hide anything from her. He and his wife Zhou Menglan are both from an incomplete family since childhood, and even after getting married, they still don't know how to manage their family. Although in love, it is still more of a state of love. But since having a daughter, the two of them have learned what responsibility is and what family is. From being a husband/wife, they have also gained the identity of a father/mother, and they share the same bond. Only when three people work together can they know what home is like. It can be said that the couple spent most of their lives on their daughter and gave her a lot of love from a young age. It is precisely because of this that even if such a situation occurs, the daughter can still be certain that she and her mother love her. Ghost girl. Li Qin nodded at her daughter's nose. Actually, the conclusion we reached as adults is that it's best to treat it as nothing has happened, but the situation in their family is a bit special, and the child is still an actress. We're afraid that this incident will have an impact on her in the future. Zhou Menglan sighed and said, if you ask me, it would be better if our two families had a tacit understanding that this matter had never happened. Anyway, it has been like this for 20 years. Li Nianmian frowned and said, however, this is not fair to my parents' biological daughter. My parents must miss my younger sister. Why don't we exchange places when we have time? By the way, since my younger sister will come back, let's change to a different house. Are there any 4 rooms in these houses at home? Although this suite is a 3-bedroom apartment, the extra room was transformed into Li Nianmian's tool room early on, piled up with a lot of messy things, so it definitely cannot be cleaned up to make a bedroom. I can't let my parents' biological child come back and live in her room with Li Nian. In case they misunderstand me and want to take action, I won't welcome her. It doesn't matter if you hate her. If you have a distance with your parents because of this, you will be too sorry to them. Li Nian knows how much his parents love him, so parents who like their children must be thinking about their own biological children to some extent. Especially for mothers, who give birth once they conceive in October and exchange their lives for a child, how could they not love them? They must be concerned about their own feelings when they say that, but Li Nianmian feels that she shouldn't be so selfish. I have been in love with my parents for so many years now, and it's hard to justify taking advantage of our family's assets. Mom and Dad, you can give whatever you want to give to anyone. In my senior year, I can in turn and gradually earn a salary to support myself. Li Nianmian still doesn't know what the situation is with the Su family. After years of guidance and love from her parents, she actually took advantage of their biological daughter. If the economic conditions of the Su family are relatively poor, or if the Su parents are top-notch parents, then she would be too sorry for that girl. Zhou Menglan and Li Qin exchanged a glance and said, no, that child doesn't want to come back to us. Have you heard of the Jiaoyang Group? Jiaoyang Group has been heard of by people in Shenzhen. After all, it is an old established enterprise in the city. I heard it's a family group. If the Li family is the father of the father and the father of the demolition household, then the Su family is the grandfather of the grandfather, and that area started doing business. Legend has it that in the late Qing dynasty, the Su family was a famous merchant. During that turbulent era, some members of the Su family went to Hong Kong for refuge and opened a company there. Later, they followed the policy and returned to the inland. The Su family has great business and lush branches, and the Su family in Shenzhen is just one branch of it. Your own father is now the person of the group. She is the youngest daughter of the Su family. She was the spokesperson of the perfume advertisement we saw when we went shopping. You said he was beautiful at that time. They both loved the child very much. That little sister. Li Nianmian suddenly remembered, isn't it just that little celebrity who debuted at the peak a while ago? End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. Su Xiwei. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 10 Su Xiwei. Li Nianmian remembers her name being Su Xiwei. A novel she had previously enjoyed was remade into a web drama, which was purchased by the Su family with a copyright of 400 million yuan. She played the female lead in it herself. Su Xiwei said she is a fan of the original work. This is to fulfill her dream. However, the effect is indeed quite good, especially in a group of S+ level produced bad dramas that performed very well. After the broadcast, this drama really became popular. The plot is well recreated and well crafted, with both the male and female protagonists having good looks. Although their acting skills are inexperienced, it is evident that they have put in serious effort, and they perform exceptionally well in a group of poorly executed film and television works. Of course, it doesn't matter how great you say it is, mainly relying on peers to set it off. Su Xiwei, a newcomer, rose to fame through this drama, and soon after, an entertainment gossip account revealed that she was a young lady from a certain group. For a period of time, Weibo and marketing accounts were filled with her articles, such as, "Counting the Real Princess of Inner Entertainment, Growing a Face That Has Not Been Bullied, Miss Qianjin's Million Wardrobe, 4 billion gold goes to Earth to film online dramas for love," and so on. Everyone, this is still a really wealthy person. Who doesn't love the beautiful, wealthy, and hard-working little sister? For a moment, Su Xiwei was unstoppable, transforming from a mere amateur to a current top-tier celebrity. She had constant invitations for scripts and variety shows, and also filmed many luxury goods advertisements. No wonder this incident would have an impact on Su Xiwei. After all, people in the entertainment industry are particularly talented, and seeing pictures and speaking out of nothing are basic skills. Not to mention that Su Xiwei is not really a child of the Su family. She bought so many, 400 million, manuscripts before, and if they were to explode, it would be a huge backlash for her. I estimate I can be mocked to death. However, upon hearing this news, Li Nian breathed a sigh of relief. Great. In that case, she didn't take advantage of Su Xiwei too much. Time passed by in a flash, and it was time for the two families to meet. The Xiaozhai restaurant is located at the end of the old street, at a small and medium-sized entrance with an ordinary sign. At first glance, it may seem like an ordinary private restaurant, but once you step inside, you will find that there is a unique cave inside. Ordinary people may not be familiar with this restaurant, and may not even have heard of it, but it is well received among the local provincial and municipal foodies. This is a private restaurant that operates on a reservation system and only receives 4 tables of guests per day. It closes for lunch. The shop owner has a bad temper, but the dishes cooked here are really delicious and have a very good level of confidentiality. Those who hold their own identities like to eat here. When Li Nianmian and Li's father and mother came in, they saw a couple with outstanding appearance, well dressed, and full of momentum sitting in the private room. Li Nian tilted her head and thought to herself that these should be her biological parents. Sitting next to the couple was a beautiful little sister wearing a small fragrance suit with obvious crying marks in her eyes. The little sister has a delicate face, is well dressed, and even her hair exudes wealth and delicacy. This is probably my parents' biological daughter, Li Nian thought to herself. When Zhou Yi saw the photo, she knew that the child looked very similar to her own mother, but she was still startled when she saw the real person. It's so similar, it's like a mold. She seems to be able to see through this child the way her mother looked when she was in her teens or 20s. After sitting down, the two families remained silent for a while, but the Su family broke their silence and said, "I believe everyone knows why they came today." Su Xiwei only realized on the way here that she was holding the wrong thing, which was difficult to accept for a while. However, hearing her parents say that no matter what happened, she was still the daughter of the Su family, which made her feel a little more at ease. We both don't want the wrong child to happen, but since it has already happened, we still need to resolve this matter properly. Our opinion here is that the children have already grown up and have their own fixed life circle, so hastily switching back is actually not conducive to the two children. Li Qin agreed and said, "It's true. The children didn't suffer, and both of them are used to their current family. Why don't we just make the right mistake and let the children come back to see their parents when they have time?" Zhou Menglan nodded in agreement. On the contrary, Zhou Yi holds a different opinion. Although it's a bit direct, there are still some differences in the conditions between our two families. I think it's better to let Li Nianmian return to the Su family, as this can provide her with a better living environment. As soon as Su Xiwei spoke, her subordinates instinctively clenched their grip. Zhou Menglan's face changed. How could this be different from what they had agreed on before? Her hand couldn't help but move. "If I go to the Su family, will Su Xiwei go back to the Li family?" said Li Nianmian, holding down her mother's poised hand. Zhou Yi shook her head decisively and said, "It's impossible. Our Su family can still afford to have two children. That's unfair." The Su family smiled and said, "If you feel that what you have received as a biological child is as unfair as Su Xiwei, I promise here that our family will try our best to make up for what we have in the past, and we will also try our best to favor you in the future." Su Xiwei's proud and slightly pitiful expression almost couldn't be sustained. "No," Li Nian shook her head reluctantly. "I mean, it's unfair to my parents. Both children are in the Su family, so what about the Li family?" The Su family raised their eyebrows to signal her to continue speaking. "So it's better to make the right mistake. She stayed at the Su family, while I stayed at the Li family. We should pretend that nothing had happened and try not to mention it to unrelated people to avoid unnecessary complications. Of course, if both parents miss their children, occasionally going home for meals or traveling together would be enough. Moreover, given Miss Su's current situation, it is not suitable to expose this matter." "Child, do you know what you'll miss out on doing this?" the Su family asked with great interest. "The biggest loss from doing this is actually herself." Li Nian shrugged and said, "This is the best solution I can think of." Zhou Yi was also a bit surprised in her heart, and once again looked at her biological daughter with a straight eye. This kind of arrogance really resembles the people of the Zhou and Su families. She and the Su family exchanged a glance and said, "We respect your thoughts, but if you don't ask your parents what they think, what if they want to be with their biological daughter?" Li Qin held Zhou Menglan's hand and said, "As parents, our emotions are the same. The palms and backs of our hands are all flesh, and we hope for Vivi, but we can't bear to miss her. But if two children live together, it's inevitable to accidentally ignore one of them and cause harm to them. It's better to explain it clearly from the beginning." They had a serious conversation the night before departure. How could they not have any expectations for their biological child? Even if something happens in their dreams, they cannot develop hatred towards this child, but it is impossible for them to get close to this child. They don't want to count the things in their dreams on this child, and Nianmian is willing to stay by their side, so maintaining the status quo is the best decision. The Su family asked Su Xiwei, "What does Vivi think?" Su Xiwei was actually secretly delighted in her heart, and her eyes were also bright. She wished she could agree to the case immediately, but she still knew that she needed to pretend a bit. She pondered for a moment and cautiously replied, "Actually, I still can't believe that this matter is true. For so many years, I have been the daughter of the Su family, also known as the parents of my parents for 20 years. You two are strangers to me, and now it's like this." Everyone expressed understanding. "Since everyone thinks it's better to maintain the status quo, I have no objection. But I hope to visit both of you when I have time." Su Xiwei is a person with a long-term vision, and there is no absolute thing in this world. If someone doesn't know that unless they don't do it themselves, she can't guarantee that this matter will not be exposed in the future, so she can only plan for the worst. Sign the contract. Afterwards, I will wait for 2,000 every day. He. Stop updating other articles for now and wholeheartedly update this one. End of this chapter.